Welcome back to another Coffee and Curveballs. I am Shooter Hunt here with a special state to the nation, Illinois, Scouting Director Drew Locascio. Drew, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's going on, Shooter? Thanks for having
Not
me.
not much. A lot of buzz out of Illinois, and we're going to start right at the top with some 23 draft names. Now, at the top of your class, Dylan Head, really talented outfielder, some serious buzz in that early day one consideration, along with Xander Muth, who's been up into the upper 90s. But I want to talk about maybe some guys who are a little bit less heralded, who are going to blow up throughout the spring, or who already have at the Super 60. What do you got on Blake Walters and George Wilcox?
Well, I think he fits the mold of what you're talking about, blowing up at the Super 60. Could not be happier, first off, for Blake Walters. He's a guy we've known out of Central Illinois. He's committed to Arizona. Big physical, athletic body, pretty explosive. We had seen him anywhere from like 90 to 93, touching a 94. Had a good summer, came to our pro case through really well, and we were able to get him into the Super 60. Kind of thought we'd see much of the same, maybe touch a 95, still be interesting because the body works really good. He's dynamic. He's pretty explosive. And he comes out and he's pumping 97.7 with the fastball, throwing it for strikes, repeated the 97.7, set a Super 60 record, was spinning a hard, intentful slider. And I mean, that guy definitely got on a lot of radars. He'll be a must see this spring. And he'll definitely be a name we're tracking. So I know you got to see him too, Shooter.
For sure, those square shoulders, the athleticism. He's one of those guys that really we knew about, and he's had that success. But you pop up in a bullpen setting. How high are we going to push this guy? Because this was real explosion. Well, when you have the boots on the ground who have seen him in game, seen him compete, seen him on the hardwood, playing basketball, it's easier to bet on that guy. And you and I have had those discussions. Like, if he starts creeping up even more, like all of a sudden we're way too low on where we have him on our board. But really looking forward to the spring for Walters. And then Wolkow, who's a reclass from the 24, which may become a trend for some of those young guys who are at the elite level. But, I mean, that frame stands out.
Yeah, and, I mean, he's another guy like Walters that only kind of solidified his status or made him more and more intriguing coming off of that event. But he was in the middle of basketball season. I didn't even really know he was playing basketball until the middle of the winter. And comes to the Super 60, looked like he was in baseball shape, ran a 6.75, launched the furthest batted ball at the event. I think it went 410 feet.
Still got a soccer player.
Corner infielder, yeah, he did. Corner infielder, outfielder profile, but really loved the fact that he played basketball this year. Was coming off the bench too and was a grinder type, played down in the low post, banging around some of those bigger bodies down there and helped lead Downers Grove North to the state semifinals. I think they took fourth in state in basketball, but athletic kid, left-handed bat. I'll definitely be checking in on him this spring to see how it's looking.
I mean, youngest kid in the class who also hits it some of the hardest in the class. So that's a good algorithm clearer for a lot of those teams. But those aren't the only ones. Tell me a little quick bit, because those Illinois pop-up guys, give me some of those guys to follow throughout the spring.
Yeah, I mean, one was Cal Sepsic,
Okay.
which you got to see him at the Super 60. He came to our pro case and earned the invite at the Super 60. It was basically just hammering baseball's MVP. He has transformed his body over the last couple of years. He's turned into one of the more physical right-handed bats in the class. Was averaging off the bat 100 miles an hour. It is just a real right-handed bat with intent in the box. Good hand-to-eye, bat-to-ball skills. Stays flat through the zone, gets a ton of backspin off the barrel. He's just one guy I'm really excited about as far as position players. But there's a plethora of arms in this class, Shooter. I mean, you start talking about Parker Detmers down in Glenwood. His brother's already thrown a no-hitter in the big leagues. He's committed to Louisville. Definitely want to get a look at him. He helped lead Glenwood to the state finals last year. They placed second in Class 3A. Then you got Dominic Vagley down by the St. Louis area out of Columbia High School. We just got to look at him. He was 90-92. High volume strikes, can really spin it. He's going to Kansas. Should be an impact guy at Kansas if he gets there right away. You've got Ryan Garrity up in Mundelein. He's another premier right-handed arm in this class. He's low to mid 90s and arguably spins the best slider. So those are just a couple arms. I mean, this 2023 class in Illinois is as good as we've seen, as good as I've seen since I've started doing this in 2015. I
And
mean, yeah, go ahead.
that's high praise, especially with this draft class, the depth of it. So it's really cool to see those draft guys. But moving on a little bit to those preseason events, and I know for me, from a national perspective, I'm locked in on Illinois for those preseason events. Who do I need to follow this spring, and who especially does everyone need to follow this summer? And those preseason events are huge to get on the radar, and especially the preseason ID, where a big time arm popped out of that, and all of a sudden you're looking at a guy who's a 24, who's up to 92.7, kind of out of nowhere. Tell me
Yeah.
more, Daniel Caracello.
Yeah. So to be honest, I think it's Cercello. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's at Nequa High School, and he was an arm that we were looking at last summer for the future games.
Okay.
Like 6'6", long, lean, loose-limbed body, really easy velo on the fastball. Was upper 80s, and last summer was basically, just a fastball only guy and a little bit of sprayed control. So we ended up not pulling the trigger on him for the future games. Maybe a mistake with the way it's looking, because he came out this winter at our Lockport preseason ID, like you said, pumping 92.7. And also showed, a developing breaking ball that should be good enough to get people off the fastball. It's easy, it's lively. There's so much upside in Daniel. So he will be a guy that, ourselves will be getting out early in the spring, taking a look at him, hopefully getting an update on him in game to be able to shoot over to colleges.
I love it when those guys don't put their head down, didn't make the future games, and he said, you know what, Drew Locascio, I'm going to roll up in the preseason event and I'm going to show out, and you're going to be regretting not taking me.
Absolutely, and he did, and that's what it's all about. I mean, we're going to miss. So, use it as motivation and prove us wrong. And man, he came out and he definitely put himself on the radar as a guy that needs to be seen really, really soon.
Now, for I'm going to shift over a little bit to the crown jewels of the preseason for you, that all-state event. First with the upper class. So we're looking at some 2024s, which, I mean, Drew, you did lose Walkout out of your 24 class there in Illinois, but it is a strong group. And at the top, Ryan Sloan. What was he looking like?
Yeah, he's a top player in our class, rightfully so, and came out and just continued to cement himself in that spot. Just really polished, free flowing arm, gets some run and sink on the fastball. Was up to 94.5, 3-pitch mix. Was an impact arm for York High School last spring. He's a Wake Forest commit. Yeah, and he should continue to stay right where he's at. He's a performer in game, gets it done, and there's more velo to come. And I mean, the stuff's as good as it gets in that class.
It's electric swing and miss stuff. I still have to see it this summer. If it all clicks for him, you're talking about one of the premier right-handed arms in that 24 draft class. What about Trevor Renstrom?
Yeah, he was uncommitted coming off of the preseason All-State. He was, for me, I didn't see all the arms at the event live, but of all the arms I saw live, he was the most polished one there. It was like I was watching a junior, senior in college. It was extremely polished. It was nothing but strikes. It was 3 pitches. It was upper 80s. It was presence on the mound. He's a 6'4", really good-looking frame with plenty, more physicality to come. And Minnesota actually just popped him. He committed to Minnesota within the last week. So good for Trevor. He'll be pitching in the Big Ten here, staying in the Midwest. And he was, one of the favorite arms coming off of that event. He would have been a high follow this spring.
Be seen. Somebody's always watching there. What about Luke Weber?
Yeah, Luke Weber was a future gamer last year, committed to Illinois after the future games. I've always loved the arm. It's really highly athletic. It's clean. It's loose. It's quick. He was mid to upper 80s last summer. Mostly a fastball changeup guy, really good changeup, could throw it in any count, above average feel. And he comes out at the All-State showing off a brand new slider. Really, really good action to it. It's still developing as far as just harnessing the action and locating it and landing it for strikes. But I mean, that emergence of that third pitch, he already had the starter profile because it's pretty easy. It's repeatable. It's a ton of strikes. I mean, you throw this slider into the mix, he's going to, stick at the top of the class as he continues to develop that.
He must have known spin wins. He got to work. And then I'm looking at uncommitted two-way here, Michael Umbright.
Yeah, he was a guy that started as a sophomore on Naperville Central. They were in our Power 25 throughout the last spring, but primarily was just playing third base, hitting like 5-6 hole for him. And really interesting. It's like a 6'5" body, fills out the uniform, can play a steady third base over there. Easy, repeatable, loose swing. Liked him as a position guy. He's been a high follow. And we started seeing some video of him throwing this past summer and fall. And, upper 80s, the arm worked. And we finally got to look at it, ourselves at this event. And it's a true two-way guy. I mean, it's 87, 89 on the mound with heaviness. A lot of strikes with the fastball. The off speed's not quite where his fastball is yet, but that's just, I think, coming to the limited amount of innings he has underneath his belt on the mound. But he's a nice piece for Naperville Central to have, and he'll be one of the top 24s that we're going out to see this spring.
Awesome. And lastly, third baseman James Love, an Eastern commit.
Yeah, he was a guy that came to our Illinois State games last fall, and kind of like what you said about proving us wrong about the future games, he was the guy we were looking at, and we went another direction. And to his credit, about 10 days after the future games, he comes to our first ever Illinois State games, and I mean, he was a top 3 prospect at that event. Was
Wow.
all over the barrel throughout the week, playing a really good third base. Long story short, commits to EIU. Comes out this winter, comes to a preseason ID, and just continues to ascend. Shooter. Every time we see him, he keeps getting better. Him and Nate George. Nate George is another EIU commit that came to a preseason ID event this year. And Nate George has crazy tools, some of the top tools in the class, and it'll warrant him getting a rise in the rankings. We'll need to go out and see him early in the spring, but he ran a 6'9", 360 on our Swift Lasers. So anybody that knows our Swift Lasers, that's moving. That's the top time we saw all winter. He was 94 from the outfield, 103.7 max exit velocity, 376 max batted ball. I mean, the tools are off the charts. We're gonna have to go see how it plays in game, but he's a guy on the rise. Nate George out of Manuka High School, outfielder. Remember that name.
Awesome. Remembered it. Shooter shortlist. There we go. And then I'm going to wrap up here with some uncommitted 25s and 26s from the preseason All-State underclass, which had college coaches just scrolling Twitter, getting to the site, reading articles, looking at the data, looking at the stats.
Hopefully. That's what we love to hear.
Keeping it to the uncommitted guys here, Drew. Okay. A catcher, Addison Latko. What do you got?
Could not have been more impressed. It was my first in-event look at him. We had gotten brief glances at him in game in the fall, stuff like that. He's a 2026 catcher. Currently I would say maybe a little undersized for some of like the more nationally known prospects in that 26 class. But man, the motor is real. The swing is real. He took one of the top rounds of BP. He gets the most out of his body. He was all over the barrel, creating leverage to the pull side. Really, really interesting right-handed bat. But what caught my eye and my attention, Shooter, is he stuck around for not only the event he was in, but the older guys checked in and ran the preseason All-State upper class after the underclass, and he stuck around because he wanted to catch. He wanted to catch velo. He wanted to show it off for us. And he was catching Ryan Sloan. He was catching Jack Bauer. He was catching all these top arms. I mean, he probably caught 30 arms on the day. So I was really, really impressed with the motor, the energy, and also the tools and talent. I mean, he's 79 from the crouch, is a 2026. The swing's real. He's going to be a guy that should be around the top of the class, as we move forward here through high school.
That sounds like a foundation piece for a college recruiter. You can really rest easy knowing that guy's in your recruiting class. But moving forward, Tucker King, who Drew, you get a little more excited here. 89 to 91. This guy's bringing it.
Yeah, uncommitted. Hopefully he'll stay uncommitted till the future games, but I know he's already getting plenty of love, as he should. He is a high-level arm out of Lyons Township. He threw for Steve Nielsen at the event, and Steve was a big fan. It brought back reminiscence of Tanner Houck for Steve Nielsen. So for those of you who know Tanner Houck, a little bit across the body, but really loose, lively stuff. Balls going all different directions in the zone, 3 above average pitches. Like you said, 89, 91 with plenty more in there. Knows what he's doing on the mound, has a presence about him, has a look, and he's established himself as one of the top arms in the class, and we'll be out really, really early to see him as well.
Yeah, that's a shooter must follow right there. I'm
Yeah.
putting it on the list right now. It'll be coming out soon. How about Joshua? Is it Holst?
Yeah, Joshua Holst. He threw on my mound at that event, so I got to see him live that day, and he was probably my favorite underclass arm, especially when you start talking about uncommitted prospects. He's from the Northern Burbs in Illinois, goes to Libertyville High School, plays for the Hitters organization out of Wisconsin. We've been hearing his name throughout the winter, but he's physical. He fills out the uniform. I mean, he caught my eye when he walked in. I wasn't really sure who it was. I hadn't seen him at an event in the past. And it's a hulking, strong, physical frame workhorse, and the arm's really clean. 3 pitches, tons of strike shooter. You'd be a huge fan. Was spinning the breaking ball, change up at the bottom of the zone. I want to make sure I do him justice here and have the correct velos on him. But yeah, he sat 85.7 to 87.8, 16.9 inches of horizontal movement. He's another one that ball is doing all different kinds of things through the zone, and it's all for strikes. I mean, he showed control, very, very polished, had an intent to him about the bullpen. Like, it was business-like when he got on the mound. So yet another arm that we're gonna have to get out and follow early on this spring. But that's why we love the winter.
Oh, that's a southpaw arm right there. That's going to perk a lot of ears and recruiting coordinators. Another arm you got in here. Speaking of ears, Caden Earring.
Yeah, Caden Earring threw for Steve once again. So I didn't see him live in the event. I had seen him in the past. The year prior, he had come to our Joliet preseason ID as a freshman. Really, really young look and really, really easy velo. Athletic, ball jumps out of the hand, doesn't have to do much to get there. He was 88, 89 this year. Last year, he was low 80s. A lot of strikes, just an athletic upside kid. That's also a two-way guy. He'll have a chance to be I don't know what kind of role he'll have here for Mundelein this spring, because Mundelein got second in state last year. They've got a lot of guys ahead of them. But it wouldn't shock me if he carves out some sort of role here pretty early on this spring.
It wouldn't shock me if Locascio was at a nice JV game too.
I could be if it's for him. Yeah.
And then wrapping up, this is a familiar name here in Domenico, but Remo in Domenico.
Yeah, his older brother Tori was a future gamer a couple years back, committed to Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Remo's kind of cut out of the same cloth. It works really well. It's loose. It's pretty easy. And kind of the same with Tori. Tori was always that low 80s guy, threw strikes, the arm worked. You could kind of see more was coming, and then all of a sudden popped. And it was in the winter of Tori, the same exact timeline that Remo's on right now, going into that sophomore season. So Remo, same deal, was like 80, 81 last fall at our Illinois State games, but through strikes, was getting some swing and misses on the breaking ball. And he comes out this winter and he's touching 89. Yeah. Same arm angle. Like, it works, right? I mean, yeah. So he'll be a high follow, a left-handed arm here for us this spring, and a guy that we'll be tracking for the future games. And schools definitely will want to know that name.
Mom and dad doing a great job raising their kids left-handed. For Locascio from the land of Lincoln, this has been State of the Nation with PBR Illinois. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Shooter. Take care.
All right, let me stop recording.